Hi everyone. We have a couple minutes to go, so we'll hang on for these couple of minutes and hopefully a few more people join in. Thank you for whoever is already here before time. Meher, I think it's 5 p.m. on the dot IST. Uh, Maybe 15 seconds more and then I'll start. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for people who have already joined. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you're from. Thanks for joining the second webinar in my monthly series on these thought leadership master classes. Last time we talked about AI and creativity, which was a kind of a fun subject. This time, what we would be talking about is a little different, is fun, but still more useful, if I may say so, in our jobs, in our life, in whether we are working in corporations or whether we are doing our own thing. And what we would be talking of something which is core to what I have been a part of for the last almost decade or so, which is about digital transformation. And we would be focusing on digital transformation in large companies. We would not be talking about digital, that's too wide. We'll be talking about digital transformation. Also, you know, there can be a digital transformation of anything. It can be for large companies, for small companies. It can be digital transformation of countries, or it can be digital transformation of you or I as individuals. But we would be focusing on digital transformation in large companies. Perhaps most of you would be a part of those. As always, just before I start, a quick introduction. I'm in Gurgaon right now. Tomorrow, actually, I fly back to Cambridge. So I divide my time between Cambridge in the UK and Gurgaon in India. Uh, in my in my 1.0 career, my past life, I worked with the Tata Group as a part of Tata Administrative Services. I was a part of Microsoft for a very long time, and then led digital transformation for the Mahindra Group as my last corporate gig, in a sense. Now uh, uh, I had run my own company called the Tech Whisper Limited out of UK, which consults and advises on digital transformation across a few companies across the world. I teach at with Harvard, with Duke, with Singularity University. Just started teaching with Ashoka University day before yesterday, which was fun. I write the couple of books, Tech Whisperer, and another one. And in fact, the first one I'll be referring to a lot specifically in this masterclass. And then I'm a student again. I'm doing my second master's in my late middle slash old age on AI ethics and society at Cambridge University, which is a lot of fun. And one of these days, we're going to have some conversations regarding AI and ethics also. So that's quickly about me. But let's kind of move to the subject. And what you see here, on this slide, a little busy slide. Sometimes transitions of slides become difficult in these webinar softwares, and so this kind of slide is a little scrunched. But if you see that graph on the top right hand side, It's a KPMG graph, and what it basically says, and it's a dated graph, but there are many graphs like this, or many diagrams like this, which basically say that digital is a top priority, if not amongst the top three priorities of companies worldwide, irrespective of geography, irrespective of sector. Everyone talks about digital transformation. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is not far to seek. If you kind of go back in business history, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, you'll find that every 5 to 7, sometimes 10 years, an entire industry gets disrupted. It just disappears in the way and the structure that it existed, and something new comes in its place. So, whether you look at the music industry or you look at uh, news or jobs or large swaths of retail, large swaths of financial services, uh, you'll find that the same needs are met, but the way the industry is structured has kind of gone away. An example I like to give of an industry which is, in my view, in the crossfire, in bang in the middle of a very massive disruption and therefore transformation, is actually the auto industry. While a lot of industries are kind of uh, getting transformed, digital and technology transformation is happening across industries, but specifically auto, I think, is probably the one which is in the throes of disruption. Now, usually what happens is that it's usually one external force, whether it be a new technology or a new business model, or it could be environmental, or it could be new regulation, or the customers itself have changed. And that kind of makes a disruption happen and transformation happen. In auto, three of these disruptions are happening, or three of these forces are acting upon auto at the same time, simultaneously. Almost like three nuclear bombs being dropped on the industry at the same time. And those three are fleets, shared economy, the second is autonomous, and the third is electric. And if you think about it, each one of these three is enough for a massive industry disruption. Here, all three of them are happening simultaneously. And um, therefore, auto industry executives across the world are pretty much are aware that their industry 5, 7, 10 years from now will look nothing like what it looks now, and so they have to transform. They have some idea of what it might look like. They don't know exactly, but billions, tens of billions of dollars are being spent for this transformation. And that is the reason why transformation or digital transformation is kind of so upfront for companies worldwide. As we kind of move through the rest of the slides, most of the time I would be giving you a practitioner's view of being there, done it, what worked, what didn't work. But what I do want to start with is a bit of an academic view on digital transformation, as to really define what this digital transformation is. Because if this is what we are going to be talking about, then what do we, as this guy is asking, what exactly do we mean by digital transformation? Uh, there are lots of definitions of it. If you go to Google and type digital transformation, it's a buzzword. You'll get, you know, thousands of definitions of digital transformation. But the one that I particularly like is one by a guy called George Westerman, Professor George Westerman, who wrote a seminal book on digital transformation called Leading Digital. And that is uh, uh, he's from MIT, one of my gurus. And the way he defines digital transformation is the following. He says it's the use of digital technology. So it's not the technology itself, it's the use of technology. And the use of digital technology, not any technology, to radically improve, not incrementally, but radically improve the performance and or reach of a company. And how, in some sense, a caterpillar turns into a butterfly or transforms into a butterfly and looks nothing like what it did. Now, in that same book, he has another fairly amusing quote, okay, which basically states that when digital transformation is done right, it's like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. But when done wrong, all you have is a really fast caterpillar. So we're going to be talking about fast caterpillars, but we are mostly going to be talking about butterflies, as to how a transformed company or a digital transformed business looks nothing like what it did when it started. Now, one of the reasons why you know I like George Westman is because he was probably the first academician who derived a correlation between digital transformation and business performance. So he surveyed about 300 plus companies across the world, across different geographies, and basically uh, he kind of, at the end of it, like a good American professor, had a 2 by 2 matrix where he put these companies in. And this 2 by 2 matrix was interesting. If you see, the x-axis of this matrix is what he calls leadership capability. So it's about the people, the skills, the talent that you have, and the x-axis is everything else. It's digital capability, it's the technology, the product, solutioning, etc. And obviously, the companies which were high were what he calls digital masters. Companies like Nike, companies like Starbucks or Codelco or Asian Paints in India. But then he had this very interesting category, which was high in capability but low investments in leadership capability. And those were what he calls fashionistas. And so you kind of put in a lot of money in digitizing, in digital, in products, and you kind of create this splash, but you can't sustain it because you have not built the right people, talent, leadership capability. And that's why he called them fashionistas, because it just happened for a little while. It was almost like digital being a fashion. And then the beginners and the conservatives are self-explanatory. And if you kind of look at the right hand side, is where he derived, as I said, this correlation between uh, digital transformation and business performance. And as you see, the high highs are actually leading both in terms of revenue generation and profitability. Now, look, there's a lot of nuance behind this. I've taken a 300 page, 300 plus page book and tried to reduce that into one slide. So obviously, this is too simplistic. But this is what digital transformation could do to large, established, successful businesses, which were seeing change happen and needed to change therefore. Now, as I said, that is an academic view. Now, I wrote a book on digital transformation, as most of you are aware, The Tech Whisperer, and it was focused on digital transformation and the technologies that enabled it. Again, I don't have the time to explain the entire book to you. And so, what I thought was that today I will kind of distill out 5 fundamental points. And these 5 points to me are the single most important, the 5 most important things that you need to know, to remember, and then as you go forward to implement in your organizations. I'm not going to go through those 5 here because we'll actually be spending time on these, but let's kind of go through them one by one in detail from next slide onwards. And so the first one is that many times when we say the word digital transformation, we say it like one word, digital transformation, DX. What we forget is that it's not one word, but two. There's the digital word and the transformation word. And many times we tend to use or focus on just the digital word, because digital is sexier. It's about new technologies, about blockchain and AI and all the stuff that is happening, machine learning and all these brilliant new models, etc. It's about business models and customer experience, and all the tech bros seem to be doing it. What we forget is that after this word, there's also another word, which is transformation. And this transformation word is not as sexy. It is harder. It's harder stuff. It's about people, culture, mindsets, organization structures, IT, back-end processes. And so many times we kind of tend to focus on the digital part, we forget about the transformation part. What I have learned is that the transformation part is actually far more important many times than the digital part. And as we go further into the slides, you'll see that I'll actually focus far more on the transformation part than actually on the digital or the technology part. The second thing, 10, 12 years back, 15 years back, as I used to walk around, meet companies and ask them whether they were doing digital, they would say yes. They built a beautiful new website. In fact, it renders great on the mobile phone also. 5, 7 years back, yes, we are doing digital. We've built a great app, mobile app. In fact, not one app, we built 200 of them. Now, it's about bots or about the metaverse or about some of these AI generative models. So we kind of tend to get these, all of these things are important, but we tend to get distracted with them and think that doing this means we are doing digital transformation. That's not true. Unfortunately, digital transformation involves the entire company. So if you see these two models that are here, the one on the top is a Capgemini model, the one at the bottom is a McKinsey model. And McKinsey takes a lot of money to show you this model, by the way. But if you look at these models, you will find that it has words like customer experience, processes, product, people, governance, funding, vision, enablement, skills. Actually, you, digital transformation runs across the entire company. In fact, one of the things, the second thing that I've learned about digital transformation in my practical experiences, that digital transformation is nothing but business transformation. It's just that to transform any business today, by default, you will require digital tools and technologies and use them. It's called digital transformation. And therefore, as a corollary, digital transformation, it needs to be led by the owner of the business, whether it be the CEO or the MD or the chairperson or the entrepreneur owner, and cannot be led by the CIO or the CMO or even the chief digital officer or the CTO, because the business is changing. It's not IT or technology that is changing. And that's the second important thing. The third thing is very interesting, and I speak of this a lot, is that many times we use the words digital transformation and digitization interchangeably. We think they are the same thing. They are not. They are both important, but they are not the same thing. Digitization is inside out. So if you think, take a process, any process in the company, and if you use digital tools and technologies to make it faster, cheaper, better, and more efficient, you are digitizing the company. And so digitization, being inside out, is a lot about costs and efficiencies, and it's linear and it has predictable ROIs. It is left brain, and it is very important. Digital transformation, on the other hand, comes from the opposite side. It's outside in. Something has changed in the customer, or her needs have changed, and therefore you need to change or transform your business to meet the new needs of the new customer. And so digital transformation is outside in and is customer value proposition led. And so it is it is not as linear, it's not as predictable. It's much more about revenue rather than about costs. And it too, it's leaps of faith, and it too is very important. So digitization is that fast caterpillar, which, if you remember George Westerman's slide, digital transformation is the butterfly, and they are not the same thing. They are both very important, but not the same thing. Digital transformation is not advanced digitization. An example I like to give is in the taxi industry. So for people who are in India, if you think of Meru, Meru is a yellow cab, radio cab operator in India. If you take Meru and use digital tools and technologies to make Meru run faster, better, cheaper, you're digitizing Meru. On the other hand, if you change the business model of Meru to an Uber or an Ola or a Grab business model, you are digitally transforming Meru. And again, when if you kind of think about what's happening in your organizations, well, pretty much 100% of traditional companies, even traditional companies, are doing digital stuff. But if you ask people as to whether what are they doing, most of the times, 90% of the times, what they're doing is digitization. What they're calling it is digital transformation, thinking it's both the same things. And as I told you, it's not. And therefore, that is the third important thing. The fourth one is where we spend the maximum time on, is what gives uh, the title, in a sense, of this webinar today, which is about the Holy Trinity of digital transformation. I have a much more elaborate model which I use for digital transformation, but this is just a simpler one. And why Holy Trinity? Because I saw that most world religions are formed on a Trinity, and I come from India, and so I've used the Hindu Holy Trinity of Brahma, the creator. Sorry, something happened in this diagram here. So Brahma, the creator, which I liken to business models. which should be here. Vishnu, the preserver. And why Brahma, the creator, is business models? Because business models generate new businesses. But then for every business to sustain itself, to run, to be preserved, uh, requires a certain minimum level of customer experience. And so Vishnu, the preserver, is customer experience, and that should be what should be here. And then there's only one destroyer, or one uh, Shiva, the destroyer, which is us, people, culture. So this three trinity of business models, customer experience, and people, culture, mindsets is my holy trinity of digital transformation. I apologize for this diagram getting messed up. Sometimes this new software kind of screws it up. But Brahma is business models, Vishnu is customer experience, all digital led, and Shiva is digital culture. So, what we will do is that over the next few slides, go a little bit more into Brahma first, about business models and reimagining business models using digital. Now, what is a business model? Again, there are many definitions of business models. Uh, the simplest ways to think of a business model is that it is the way how you make money. Uh, and most companies make money in one simple way. You build something and you sell it, whether it be a product or a service. I, in fact, have done some research and found that there are 19 different ways to make money, 19 different business models. Some of them which we will talk about, but what we will focus on is one of those business models, the most digitally enabled one of them, which are the platform models. And here I'm going to take inspiration from the father, I believe, of business models, of platform models, called Sangeet Paul Chaudhary, who wrote these seminal books, Platform Scale and then Platform Revolution. And so if you think of it in a very simple way, a product company, a product model is where you make one and you sell one. So you make a toothpaste and you sell it, or you make one mobile phone and you sell it. There's the service provider model where you hire one and you sell one. You hire a person and you sell that person's skills. So IT services. And you scale as you add more people. And then there's a software company business model, which is like Microsoft, for example, where you make one, sell many. So you make one Microsoft Office or Excel, and you sell millions and millions of them and make a lot of money. Platform models take it one level higher, where many make, many sell. So one obvious example, which we all know, is about hotels and Airbnb, and where hotels are more a product model. You make one room and you sell it. You make one more room and you sell that room. While in an Airbnb, many make those rooms and many of them actually sell those rooms. And so the scalability of platform models is far, far, far greater. Let's kind of go a little deeper into platforms. So what Sangeet calls our normal business models are what he calls our pipe models, not platforms, but the ones which we use today. Now, what are pipe models? So if you kind of just close your eyes for a bit and think of this a long pipe. Pipe models are ones where there's raw material at one end, finished product at the other, or cost at one end, revenue at the other, investment at one end, return at the other. And so if you have a raw material on one end of the pipe, you build it into a product and add more value. And then you kind of package that product, add even more value, brand that product, add even more. Then you can distribute that product, add substantially more value. And then finally, you kind of promote or advertise that product and add even more value. And so the value at the other end of the pipe is much more than the value where you started with. And this, in our typical jargon, is what we call the value chain. And most of us, whether we know about the value chain or not, most of our companies are run along this value chain. Platform models are different. So unlike in pipe models where you have uh, uh, cost at one end and revenue at the other, in platform models you have cost and revenue at both ends. I'll repeat, cost and revenue at either end. So what that means is that for if someone, for example, can watch a YouTube video on one end, but can go to the other side and upload a video and earn money, A lady can rent out an Airbnb at this site, but she can move to the other side and actually rent out her vacation home as an Airbnb and earn money. I can take a Uber ride at this side, but I can move to the other side and rent out my car as an Uber and earn money, cost and revenue at both sides. Now this is difficult for us to understand. Think of a pipe company. The CMO, the chief marketing officer of the pipe company, is basically responsible for looking after one end of the pipe, the customer end. In a platform business, in Uber, the CMO is responsible for both sides, the customers as well as the drivers. HR in a pipe company is about taking care of its employees. Airbnb reportedly, when it does its host conferences, hosts are the people uh, who give out their houses. HR is responsible for them. Our hosts employees, not employees, and so it kind of becomes a little difficult. Pipe thinking and platform thinking is very, very different. Now, a lot of people ask me that why is it that suddenly almost every company getting created now uh, is a platform company? People are using platform business models more than pipe business models. And many people think that the reason for that is technology because you require mobile phones and 4G, 5G, and app stores and apps and data, AI, maps, etc., to build platforms. And then, because those are available, platforms are being built. Well, that actually is not the reason. Sure, without these technologies, it would not be possible. But the reason is not that. The reason is this: customers all around us are changing rapidly. When I was growing up, and if you were almost as old as me when you were growing up, everything was tied to ownership. You wanted to own your first bike, and then your second bike, and your first car, and your second fancier car, and your first house, and your vacation house. You wanted to own a Gucci dress, a Tiffany necklace, a Rolex watch. Status was tied to ownership. With the kids today, the younger generation today, that's not true any longer in most places. Um, they would live in a rented house, take an Uber to work in a co-working space. Uh, if there's use rent furniture for the house, if there's a party to go to, rent a Gucci dress. The only thing that they would pay for is experiences. And so I joke with people that there are more young people who would rather go to Machu Picchu than buy their own car. Uh, the second thing, importantly and thankfully, is that this younger generation is far more environmentally conscious than we are. And so they're like, enough cars have been built. Let's use those. Cars are sitting unused 97% of the time. Let's use those. Are there enough second homes out there? To, don't build more hotels and screw up the earth even further. Let's use those. And it is this generation, obviously, which is creating all these startups. And because they live this way, most of the startups coming up, whether tech or non-tech, even consumer, are actually built on platform models rather than pipe models. Now, all this is fine for startups, but what do we do? As in, what do large established enterprises do? Because remember, this talk is not about startups, this talk is about digital transformation of large enterprises. And so, let me give you an example from my own life, where when I was in Mahindra, there was a Mahindra makes great tractors, it makes the most tractors in the world, it owns half the market in India, amazing business for them, does really well, grows well. But the company simultaneously started a startup called Tringo, which was an Uber for tractors, brand agnostic, not only for Mahindra tractors. I joke that it took 6 months to build the app, but more than that to actually convince management that this should not be only for Mahindra tractors, for all tractors, brand agnostic. And therefore, you earn money not from each tractor sold, but from each mile driven. And a tractor sits there. Look, there are 120 million farmers in India. 6 million tractors sell every year. How many? You can't have 120 million tractors. And so either you kind of somehow figure out how each farmer can have a tractor, which would be ruinous, or you have a different business model. And if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it because tractors are an asset which are lying unutilized for a long time. Now, obviously, when this app was created, it had to be done in a different way. It's rural India. You can't just have a smartphone app and think everything is solved. You needed to have it in local languages. You needed to have it with a phone also, the service. You needed to have local physical points, which was great for the company because Mahindra had dealerships all over. It had to be done in a different way, built as a startup out of a co-working space, a CEO, CTO kind of model. And so building a platform model for an existing large business is one example. Another example from my Mahindra life itself was about Smart Shift, which was a similar aggregator model for small trucks, the kind of Jito trucks that Mahindra has or Tata Ace, etc. And again, this was cannibalistic. Both, and here also you were kind of not only your trucks, but all trucks which were doing intra-city logistics. Now, these kind of things, and this SmartShift was quite successful. In fact, then it got merged with another company, and Mahindra created value and its own competitor. Uh, Now, these things are very difficult for existing large market leaders to do because it involves a mindset shift. But more than that, you've been only selling your brand, and now you have to even co-opt your competitor brands. And also because if Tringo works, for example, you don't need to make any more new tractors. So the mother company declines. Uh, and so it's a courageous thing and therefore a difficult thing for incumbents to do. There are examples across the world. Some of these companies that you see here are platform models for parking, for charging, for ride hailing, but all in the luxury segment. And the wonderful part here is that the two arch competitors actually got together to create most of them, recognizing that the world is actually changing. So this was about Brahma. Let me move quickly to the second god, which is Vishnu, and how customer experience or customer journey transformation is also a very critical part of digital transformation. And this is not Vishnu. This is Mark Zuckerberg. He founded a company called Facebook, which is now called Meta. And the reason I put his face there is because Mark Zuckerberg's company, or Facebook, what was Facebook and still exists as a property, Facebook, actually changed something very fundamentally in our customer experience. Before Facebook, our online persona and our offline persona were different. If you remember, people who are old enough, if you remember chat rooms, we used to go into them with pseudonyms. And many times our offline persona was not very happy with what our online persona would do in chat rooms, but was safe because they were different identities. Now, that is not necessarily true after Facebook. After Facebook, everything changed. Our online persona or identity merged with our online identity. They became the same. And so the Facebook generation, people who are 27, 28 years old and younger, for them, online, offline is one thing. It's seamless. Customer journeys have become seamless across those. It's not a different thing. In fact, the words online and offline do not exist as far as they are concerned. They only exist in our minds. Think of your last Uber trip. When you called Uber online, you saw it coming online. It finally came offline. You got in offline. You saw how far online. You saw the traffic on the phone online. You saw the traffic outside offline. How long it will take online. You got there offline. You got out offline. You paid online. Now you did this online offline thing without actually thinking whether you were online or you were offline. The problem is that in most companies, traditional companies, we still think that way. And so many times we have a chief marketing officer, and within her function, there'll be someone who will head digital marketing. As if when the customer moves to the digital part, this person looks after her. And when the customer moves to the offline part, another person looks after her. And then many times within the head of digital marketing, we have a head of social. So, within digital, when the person some mysteriously moves to social, this person looks after her. And that's kind of an old world thinking, which doesn't work for customer journeys today. And most tech companies or startups don't have it that way. So if you really go out and map a customer journey, our companies are actually built for customer journeys which existed many years ago. And I'm again talking of large established companies. If you go map a customer journey, we're not going to go through this, but you'll actually find that the customer journey, what you think is the customer's journey and what the customer's actual journey is, are very different. And that is why customer dissatisfaction happens. And how do you then use digital tools and technologies to make a new customer journey is a really the customer journey view of digital transformation. I like this slide a lot. This is the number of clicks it takes to open a bank account, totally online. And if you see this, you'll find that most of the old world banks, so HSBC takes 99 clicks to open a bank account. Revolut, which many of you would have heard of, online bank, takes 24 clicks. Same regulator, same everything, same kind of services. It's just that how the customer journeys are so very different. In the UK, I have a Lloyd's Bank account, I have a Monzo account, and they could not be more different. In fact, I feel like two different people when I'm dealing with them. Um, to give you an example from my life, Mahindra again makes a lot of cars, and we had this customer journey in our mind until we decided to revisit it. And we did this massive exercise over 6 months to map out the new customer journey, and we found many things. But the two insights which we got were that one, 67% of customers in India had decided which car to buy before they even entered a showroom. They only went to a showroom to test drive. And the second is that e-commerce had spoiled the customer. People wanted stuff to come home. And here we were building all these fancy showrooms on high streets, which very few people would go to. You would have walk-ins of like 7 in a day or whatever. Now, working in a very agile, prototype kind of driven, MVP kind of manner, we kind of came out with many products. And one of those was what we called Bring the Showroom Home. And which basically was that a car drives to your house, and so you can test drive it. And there's a virtual reality headset there which you wear, and you can see different models, colors, accessories, variants, etc. The showroom has come home. Much more in line with the new customer journey. And if it scales, then you don't need to spend so much money creating those massive offline showrooms, all of which lose money. And so, what happens really is to conclude this section. What really happens is that as large, established, successful companies, we are very good at building these paved paths. We kind of build them really well. Our processes run brilliantly. Each tile fits neatly, right angles, the right ledges, everything. The customer, unfortunately, takes this path. How do you use digital tools, technologies to transform from this path to this path? Is what really is the customer experience view of digital transformation, and something which you can actually practically do in most of your companies. And that kind of brings me, oh, I forgot. And why it's so important is also because COVID, as we all know, the pandemic, the lockdowns, have irrevocably changed customer journeys uh, across sectors. And so companies need to very rapidly change. And that brings me to the third god, which is Shiva. And it's actually should be here. It's about mindset and culture, capabilities. And Shiva is a very powerful god. Now, there's a big faction of Hindus who believe that there's no Holy Trinity. There's Shiva is the creator, Shiva is the preserver, Shiva is the destroyer. Now, I don't know whether that's true of mythology or not, but it's certainly true or it's true of Hinduism or not, but it's certainly true of digital transformation. Shiva is the most powerful god in digital transformation. Now, Shiva is not called the destroyer just for the heck of it. He doesn't destroy for the heck of it. Shiva destroys to recreate. And so many years back, millions of years back, millennia back, he taught us that if we need to change anything, we first need to, or if we want to create anything new, we first need to destroy the old. But we have not learned that lesson. We want to create a new company, we want to transform a new kind of business, but we still want to keep the old stuff, the old mindsets, the old people, the old culture. And that's why it never works. And so, one of the things that I have seen is something which is corroborated by this BCG slide. Now, BCG did this survey a while back on 79 successful digitally transformed companies or companies which did large digital initiatives successfully. And to these 79 companies, they asked this question that which of these 79 did addressed the culture change part right up front and explicitly? And the answer, not surprisingly, was 79 out of 79. It's that important. And so, what I have learned is that successful digital transformations can succeed for many reasons, but the unsuccessful ones, they fail for only one reason. And that reason is the Lord God Shiva. If I have talked about BCG, I should talk about McKinsey also. And so, here's this McKinsey survey. Global survey, which kind of showed that culture and behavioral challenges were the number one, the most significant barrier to digital transformation or effectiveness. Not something which would surprise you, but it is really true. Today, more than half the time that I spend with my clients or earlier in Mahindra or wherever was actually addressing this aspect. Because digital companies just look, feel, you walk into one and it looks, feels, smells, sits, behaves, talks differently than a non-digital company. They view the world not only in atoms but in bits. It's all about being curious, not fearing failure, being open-minded. It's just a different conversation. And the important thing is that organization culture always follows gravity. It flows top down. So it's the founder or the CEO who sets the culture of an organization. And most traditional companies do not have those kind of leadership. And that culture change therefore becomes that much more difficult. And so what I learned was that digital transformation does not happen in the boardroom or in the plant or factory or in the cubicles. Uh, Digital transformation happens in your head between your two ears. That's the space that you need to work in. And there's so many things I can talk about in this aspect of it. It's almost unfair. One of these days we'll have a separate webinar on digital culture. But one of the things which I want to leave you with in the Shiva part is that most traditional companies make change this way on the top. They want to get everything perfect. The If they want to paint the Mona Lisa, the first eye needs to be perfect, the second eye, then the nose, etc., and then the rest. And finally, you get a perfect Mona Lisa, and never happens. The agile way of doing it is actually where you kind of have something which vaguely looks like Mona Lisa, and then looks even more like Mona Lisa, and then finally more like, and finally with. And this is the agile way of doing things. And agility many times equals imperfection, and it's sometimes very difficult culturally for successful companies to think that way. Finally, the fifth point. The fourth point was about the Holy Trinity, and the fifth point, where I have a fairly dated slide, is about technology. And as I told you, in digital transformation, I'll speak a lot more about transformation, little about digital. So I'm kind of focusing on the digital part first. A lot of people ask me that, look, what do we do? There's so many technologies for digital transformation. And every time, every morning you get up, there's a new technology out there. And that's true. While this is a 5-year-old uh, matrix, you just have new words, new names out there. Some of these technologies are strategic, some of them are tactical, some of them are incremental, some of them are disruptive. But the way to look at technology is in two ways. One, that they are extremely powerful tools to make digital transformation happen, the use of digital technology. If you remember Westerman's definition. And secondly, we are lucky to have them in the models that they exist. Today, we are lucky because 10, 12 years back, if we wanted to experiment, wanted to make change happen, it would cost a lot of money and we would not have half the tools. Today, we have the tools, and because of the cloud SaaS kind of business models, we can use them extremely well to make change happen. Many times, what happens is that established companies are very afraid of startups. They're like something like Uber or Airbnb will come and disrupt our business. Possible? But that will only happen 1 in 10,000, the probability of that. The companies which you need to look out for are these five, what I call the five horsemen of the apocalypse. These are the 5 companies which have the very same thing that you do, and that thing is called data. It's just that they use data much better than you do. And all the technologies that they have are just to make data, to leverage data better. Amazon, for example, famously knows that you're pregnant before you do. It's because a woman is impelled by her bodily impulses to go and search for baby stuff on Amazon. And Amazon's extremely powerful machine learning algorithms have seen this before, with millions of women coming in and doing the same kind of searches. And it kind of figures that out and says she's pregnant, first trimester, second month. And Amazon starts throwing baby stuff at this poor woman. Now imagine, with this kind of personalized power, how effective could Amazon be in healthcare? And Amazon is trying to get into healthcare. And so all of these companies will get into these adjacent businesses, new businesses like healthcare, insurance, banking, etc., and shake the incumbents. And these are the companies which you need to learn from as to how we can use data better. And this is where I come to the technology view, my final slide, the technology view of digital transformation, which I'm borrowing from a great partner that I have called ThoughtWorks, uh, uh, US and Bangalore based NASDAQ listed company. And ThoughtWorks has this concept of how do you make your business tech at core. So most businesses are here on the left hand side of the slide, where there's business, and sitting in the next room, sometimes in the next building, is IT or technology. And you literally throw a problem over the wall to IT or tech, and IT or tech solves that and throws it back to you. You're not happy, you throw it back, and life continues, nothing happens. 50-60% of the companies are where technology plays a supporting role. Maybe 20% of companies have moved to the next stage, where you at least know who the IT or tech guy is. You kind of work with him, you collaborate, you sit with him, have coffee, you know his name, and so things happen a little better. Most tech companies and startups are in the third phase, which is where business and tech belong to the same team. They report to the same manager. That's why product management as a concept and these boundaries between the two have blurred, irrespective of the industry. And so here is where more effective stuff happens. And the holy grail is at the right hand extreme, where you become what is called tech at core, where tech becomes the core and the business wraps itself around it, not the reverse. And to give you an example, if I was to ask you whether if Amazon is a retail company doing tech or a tech company doing retail, it's a tech company doing retail. Swiggy or Zomato or DoorDash are tech companies doing delivery. Uber is a tech company doing transportation. Airbnb is a tech company doing hospitality. They are tech at core. And this is the holy grail, and this is the technology view of digital transformation. How do you move here? Very difficult to do, but companies like Visa, for example, Bajaj Finance in the Indian context, are companies which have either achieved that or are coming very, very close to that. And so, to kind of sum up, uh, the 5 things, the 5 fundamental points that I wanted to talk to you about. One, as I said, digital transformation is not one word but two, and we need to focus much more on the transformation part than on the digital part. Digital transformation is much beyond creating a website, app, bot, metaverse, something. It involves the entire company. It's the same as business transformation, and it needs to be owned by the owner of the business or the CEO. Digital transformation and digitization are different things, as we saw. And then we came to this Holy Trinity, where I again seek forgiveness for those botched up diagrams there, but it was about uh, Brahma and business models, and Vishnu and customer experience, and the most powerful god of them all, which is Shiva, uh, which is about people, culture, mindset, us, the people. And then 5 was that how was a technology view as to how every company needs to become a tech company, become tech at core. And so this is where I thought I'll kind of end. And just before I move on to Q&A, if any, which I would love you to type in the section given here, the chat section, Q&A section, is that look, if you want to chat with me, I'm usually found either on justpritindra.com, on Twitter. Definitely, I live on Twitter and LinkedIn. This is my book, which you can see on the right hand side, which is on this topic. Much more detail about what I've spoken is in the Tech Whisperer. So if you're kind of interested in this topic, you might want to pick it up. And with that, let me just move to comments, if any. I can now see comments. A lot of people, hey Gray, oh, my friend Shwetank is there, and Sanjeev Dugal is saying not audible and visible, but I think Sanjeev, for some reason, a bunch of others could see it, so maybe there was some problem. Yuvraj, you're thanking me, and so is Gyan. Thank you very much. As I said, if you would have any, I mean, I'm very happy with the compliments, but beyond that, if you would have any questions or comments, please do type them in. I'll be very happy to respond to them, if any. So why don't I wait for that? A lot of people, as I'm waiting for those, a lot of people ask me what books to read, and besides mine, I would I would definitely recommend two, which is Leading Digital by George Westerman, and I'm writing that here. Leading Digital, George Westerman, and the books by Sangeet Paul Chaudhary, which are both platform scale as well as platform revolution. There's obviously my book, Tech Whisperer, which I showed you, but let me just write it down also. It's published by Penguin. Vijaya, thanks for your comments also. Someone asked me a question, Ankit, will it be wise to say that digitization is a subset? No, Ankit, actually, many times people think of it as a sequence rather than a subset. So many times it makes sense to do digitization first and then do digital transformation, because otherwise, if you don't have some basic stuff, I mean, if you don't have a ERP system, for example, or a CRM system, for example, doing transformation is useless. On the other hand, and I warn people this, that look, if your industry is changing rapidly, if you were an auto company, for example, if you started digitizing your current business models, your current operations, it would be great. It would take 5 years, but it's possible that at the end of 5 years, you would have a super digitized business model, but the business model itself has changed. And so, most times, unfortunately, again, you have to do digitization and digital transformation simultaneously, and they are different skill sets. And so, there are very few people who can actually do both. It's not necessary that a CIO who's a great digitization guy also knows digital transformation and vice versa. And that's why many times it converges on the CEO, or you create a CDO. But it's not necessarily a subset. There's definitely an intersection of the Venn diagram, but they are different, uh, and sometimes sequential. Thanks, Sonu, for reading the book. Thanks, Vijay, also for the same. Abhishek, is digital transformation kind of a bit cruel to existing workforce? It's a good question, Abhishek. It depends on how you define cruelty. Sometimes a quick death is defined as cruel. Sometimes a slow death can be more cruel than a quick death. So I'm being a little provocative here. But see, what I have learned in my experiences that people appreciate being told what the real situation is. And then they really appreciate if management deals with that situation, even if it means that their jobs or their team's jobs get impacted in some way or the other. Because they're not fools, they know what's happening across the world. That's one part of it. The second part of it is they would be fools if they don't know what's happening across the world. I didn't talk about the digital transformation of the employee, but even we as people need to transform ourselves. We need to learn new skills. We need to be aware that there are no such thing as lifelong jobs anymore. We need to constantly re-educate ourselves. It's not about doing an engineering degree and MBA and sitting back and saying that now I'm done. I've learned everything there was to learn. It's about constant reinvention. It's about lifelong learning. And if you kind of do that, you'll never be laid off. There'll be no cruelty done on you. So as long as uh, both sides define what cruelty is, but yeah, I mean, definitely there will be, for any transformation of anything, there are side effects. There are massive effects, and uh, only if the company is absolutely frank about it and the employees are aware and have reskilled themselves, is there's going to be no cruelty which is done. The digital transformation of work is a here and now thing, and sometimes it's called future of work, and we all need to be ready for it. Yuvraj, HR transformation that has started prevailing, conversational bot. Interesting example. Many times people used to think that really digitization or digital in HR is really a bot. So you make a bot and HR is transformed. Or at best, you have an HRMS and HR is transformed. Uh, I also don't believe that you can do digital transformations of functions. You can digitize functions, but you can only digitally transform businesses. And as you digitally transform businesses, functions have to change themselves and transform themselves as a part of the whole accordingly. In HR, specifically, Yuvraj, COVID has been a big wake up call. One of the things which I wrote about in my second book is about this COVID paradox, as to how COVID has slowed down the world yet accelerated change. And the greatest change perhaps has happened, as we all know, in the workforce. I mean, I see it. The number of HR people, L&D people, HR business partners who thought about digital before the pandemic, and now there's a sea change. In fact, when I go and work on digital transformation assignments in companies, I'm very surprised to see that the HR person is not on the tables. And I told you that the people and the cultural transformation is perhaps the biggest thing that uh, needs to happen. And so for me, digital transformation, not digitization, digital transformation at an HR level is really cultural transformation. And the CEO and the CHRO need to be the people who own that cultural transformation into a newer kind of quote unquote digital culture. And that is the digital transformation part that HR needs to play, not conversational bots. Those are normal things which will keep on happening, not happening. It will help in some ways, not help in other ways. Anything else? We have about 2 minutes to go. Thanks, Abhishek and Vijay. Okay, I think the questions have kind of dried up, which is fine. Uh, so what we'll do is I'll wait for another 30 seconds or so, and then I'll give you 1 minute of your life back. Rather than completing in 1 hour, we'll complete in 59 minutes. Okay, I guess thank you very much. As I said, these are my coordinates. Very happy to continue our conversation there. And next month, we will come back with another very interesting topic around digital transformation or around the technology. So watch my LinkedIn, watch my Twitter, and you will learn more. If you enjoyed this one, I can assure you you'll enjoy the next one even more. Thank you very much. Good night, good evening, and good rest of the day for everyone.